Thank you, Shiv Kumar, for that kind introduction. You know, you see there are two Kumars. When you put two Kumars together, what you're going to see today is going to be fairly explosive. Can you hear me?
Yes. He's saying three Kumars because Vijay Kumar is there.
Oh, Vijay Kumar, not to mention. It's even more explosive. And I would like to join some of you in wishing all of you a great Onam festival. And I also want to acknowledge a few people before I make my brief remarks. First of all, I would like to thank Captain Vijay Kumar. At such short notice, he put together this program. I think we have a lot to learn from you. In the US, we can do a program in 2 days. That's out of question. I do want to acknowledge my extended family here, Ranjani Manian. They have been my friends, my family, a home away from home for me in Chennai. I also had the privilege of meeting somebody, my friend from Los Angeles, Ravi Venkatraman, a graduate of IIT who came to the US and one of the rare people who came back to India. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my dear wife, Dr. Vatsala Kumar. She is a cardiologist in her own right. And she accompanies to these programs. And she knows more about immigration law than I know about cardiology. I'm very happy to have her here today. It is a very broad subject, immigration. I would like to make some broad observations and leave most of the discussion to take place by way of questions and answers. When I speak about immigration law, you all notice that there has been a lot in the news recently. In India, overseas, immigration has been at the center of the universe in all countries. Not surprisingly, because as migration becomes more prominent, people migrate to other countries, and it plays itself out in the theater of democracy. So when you're looking at recent news in the area of immigration law or US-India relations, I would like you to have a long-term perspective. At the end of the day, US is a stable democracy, supported by phenomenal institutions. And these institutions provide the bulwark for the democracy to thrive and succeed. And India too is a democracy. And in democracies, leaders come and leaders leave, because at the end of the day, they are answerable to the electorate. So when we see all this news that's coming out, it is best for us to step back and take a long-term perspective and have faith in the institutions that has brought us to be who we are. The long history of US democracy speaks for itself. So having said that, what are some of the areas that I want to cover briefly today? There has been a lot of news about the F1 student visas. We have to be very careful to separate facts from fiction, from what is really happening in the US to the news coverage that you receive. These are two different things. So if you take a pause for a second and think about it, we do not have any fundamental changes in the law. The fundamental law, the Immigration and Nationality Act, has stayed stable over centuries. So what is changing is simply changes in the regulatory process or some policies that change from administration to administration. Even more phenomenal is the fact that the current administration, the current dispensation in the US, are interpreting the laws much more narrowly, with the result they're tightening the noose in terms of implementation. But nonetheless, all of this has an impact on the lives of people. So I will start by telling you the major changes in the area of student regulations. There are three changes principally. The first change is, if you look at the current regulations, Indian students or any international student for that matter, they are admitted to the US on a status called the F1DS, which stands for duration of stay, or duration of studies rather, which essentially meant if somebody is admitted to the US, they are able to continue their studies, transfer schools, pursue their STEM OPT without ever going back to the USCIS, the body that controls the immigration administration in the US. That has been changed now. The change is the DS has been removed now. Instead, they have capped F1 students for a maximum period of 4 years. So what happens in 4 years? You have to go back to the USCIS and go through an adjudication of your application, where they get an opportunity to review what you have been doing. So therefore, it is another regulatory mechanism through which they check to make sure that you're going to the school that you're supposed to go, that you're pursuing your education, and that you're not working without authorization in the US, that you're not taking part in activities that seem to be inconsistent with the larger American interests. So the first change was that the DS has been changed to 4 years, and in 4 years you have to go back and request the immigration to review your F1 visa to decide whether they want to continue or they want to discontinue your F1 status. The second change is, when students were admitted in the past, they were given a grace period of 60 days subsequent to completion of all your school, subsequent to completion of your optional practical training. And in 60 days, you could apply for a change of status or leave the country. That has been reduced to 30 days, a shorter window. What does it all mean? It's very consequential, because F1 students who came to the US and violated their status and stayed there, not going to school, not going through proper transfer of institutions, or even those who worked without legal authorization, were able to go back to India in this context and apply for a visa to come back to the US. And then the State Department, through their visa officers, will make a determination whether or not they're going to give you a visa to come back. That was fairly a routine procedure. But now if you stay in the US and you violate the terms of your F1 regulations, at the end of 4 years, your visa gets terminated. Your stay gets terminated. So it leaves you in a very difficult situation if you continue to stay in the US for more than 6 months, more than 180 days. You are subject to what is called as a 3-year statutory bar. It is very draconian in its implementation, and there is no exception to that. And if you stay for 1 year or longer, you are barred for 10 years from re-entering the country. So you are neither able to stay in the US because you have lost your status, or if you leave the country, you are not able to come back for 3 to 10 years, depending upon the length of time. The net result of this is F1 students cannot stay there, cannot make careless mistakes. And if they do any of this, they will get into immediate trouble with this axe falling of a 3-year or a 10-year bar, thereby completely taking away their ability to pursue any career in the US. So these are the 3 changes in the F1 visa regulations. We'll go back later to address some questions as they come up. Let's talk about the H-1B. The H-1B visa holders are those who come to the US, the normal conventional process. They come to the US to study. At the completion of their studies, they get what is called as an OPT, an optional practical training, which is nothing but a work authorization to work in the US in the field in which you went to school in the US. That OPT in the area of STEM fields is given for a period of 3 years. During those 3 years, you have permission to work for any number of employers as long as you are pursuing your skill level improvements, you are pursuing and learning something in your own field. What happens at the end of the 3 years? Where do you go? Now comes the H-1B. H-1B conventionally has been a method where all the companies used in the US extensively to recruit foreign nationals to work in many different areas, including in skilled positions. The H-1B is granted for a period of 6 years, and the H-1B comes in the following way. It is controlled by a numerical system. They authorize 65,000 H-1B visas every year. And they add another 20,000 for people with graduate or master's degrees. So you are competing for 85,000 visas. And the number of people who apply far exceeds that supply. So therefore, they were going through a lottery system to select. And the lottery system worked regardless of your qualification. Every person who gets into the lottery has an equal opportunity to get selected. That is all looking very good. Now, the current administration has proposed changes to that lottery system. How did they change the lottery system? Now they are saying that those people with high skills, with master degrees, and with prevailing wages which are very high compared to wages in the US, they will be given a greater weighted average. They will be given a weightage and they will calculate the average. With the net result is that people with high skills, people with good wages, people with master's degrees, the system is going to be skewed in the direction of many more of them getting selected. So those with bachelor's degrees or even with master's degrees with no experience, or they do not command the wages, they are going to be at the lower end of the totem pole. That is the big change. And they are proposing these changes to become effective for the next lottery season, because the lottery season usually happens in the month of March. Now, Indians are very concerned because 70% of the H-1B visas are held by Indian nationals. Out of the 70%, most of them are in the STEM fields. So that's why you hear about companies laying off people, companies recruiting people. That system is going to change. That is all I would like to say about H-1B. H-1B, nothing has changed. The basic regulations will continue to be what they are. The lottery system will still continue, but your chances are going to get much smaller. There is another visa category called the L1 visa. It has existed for a long time. L1 visa is usually given for those who are working for multinational corporations. L1 visas enable people to transfer their employees between their own organizational branches. In other words, if there is a company in India and they own a company in the US, either they own the majority of the shares or they have a joint ownership, or the ownership is identical in terms of a corporate structure here and in the US, then they are able to transfer people from, say, in India, as long as they work for 1 year in the previous 3 years, either in a managerial capacity, which is called the L1A, or in a specialized field called the L1B, when they have professional skills. L1 visa is also given for 6 years, sometimes for 7 years, and it is not subject to numerical controls. Second, it is not also controlled by the Labor Department in terms of the wages to be paid. But the scope of the L1 is really much bigger than most of the smaller companies can think of. You need to have an organizational structure to support an L1. In other words, if somebody is coming there as an L1E managerial employee, they take the position that there must be an organization structure, a hierarchy. There is a president, there are several vice presidents, and there are people in the STEM fields working, or any field working beneath them. And then there are some clerical staff to support them. So most of the Indians coming with smaller companies get very excited when they get the first L1 visa. But then when the time comes for them to extend, they are not able to create that organization structure because of fiscal problems or because of inability to pay the kind of wages that you're required to pay, and the L1s fail. So my request to those who are thinking of it is to think of a larger or of a bigger scope. That is the L1 visa. What other visa categories are there? O1. O1 visa is for aliens of extraordinary ability. And in the recent past, they allowed people with startups and people with some sense of what they're doing already in either bringing initial capital or in bringing employment to the US. They end up being able to get the O1 visa. We do a lot of these O1s through our office. We also do a lot of L1 multinational companies. Once you leave all of these categories, by the way, if you go on an H1, you have a 6-year limit. Unless the company sponsors you for a green card, if you're an L1, you have a 6 to 7 year limit. And that limit will also create issues for you. So now those who go there are saying, what happens now? I want to get a green card. That green card is not even green in color, but it has received a lot of fame in the US. The green card is talked about in matrimonial circles. It is discussed everywhere because that signifies stability. You are now able to hang your hat and say that you can stay in the US and you can work in the US forever. What is the issue with that? These are called the immigrant visas. The immigrant visas are issued with a certain number every year, and that number is 675,000. Out of the 675,000, about 40% of them go toward the family-based immigration. About 35 goes toward the employment-based. And these are all controlled by the numbers because no country may get more than 7% of the total of the number we talked about, which is 675. Indians are placing excessive demand on a limited supply capped by the 7%. The net result is Indians have to wait for a long time to get a visa in every category. Talk about employment category. If you have master's degree, if your company sponsors you, the waiting time is now approximately 15 to 20 years. And it is still increasing the line. If you have a bachelor's degree, it is 25 years. So in some ways it has destabilized the career paths of people in such a way that they're not able to make a decision. How long are they going to stay in a state of animated suspension, for lack of a better word? They want to do something, they want to do a startup, they just got caught in this cycle, unable to decide whether they can buy a home. When they get married, where do they really establish their future? If they want to start a startup, where do they want to start their career? So these career paths for Indians have been impeded. Their freedom has been taken away to flourish professionally in whichever way they would like to pursue their careers. So if you look at the family-based petitions, it's not much brighter either. If somebody gets married to a permanent resident, the waiting time is about 4 to 5 years. If somebody gets married to a US citizen, it is an immediate relative. You can expect to get a green card in a year or two. If there are parents whose children are citizens who are sponsoring them, they too can get a green card in a year or two, no more than that. Barring this, for professionals coming from India, going to school or coming directly to pursue H1 or on L1 visas, with some degree of success with L1 with a shorter period, because those who come on an L1 can also apply through the first preference category, but even the waiting time there is 5 to 6 years. If a brother or a sister sponsors someone who is a relative of a US citizen, the waiting time is 25 years. So you can see for yourself what all this means. So finally, I would like to bring in the question of EB-5, which comes as a peerless opportunity right now among the visas to be able to get a green card quickly. EB-5 visas have been created primarily to create employment in the US and to get people to bring capital to the US. The capital can be brought even from the US sources. So this visa category EB-5 existed, that too, over a period of time, the line started getting longer for Indians. They have hit every category. The moment they move in Indians, the lines are long. So in the year 2022, the government proposed, the Congress proposed what I call it as a major step which changed the landscape of the EB-5 program. Under the EB-5 program, 10,000 visas are issued nationally. Out of that, Indians will get about 1,000. Out of the 1,000, they create reserved categories. 10% of them, that is about 100 of them, are given to people in targeted employment areas, usually expressed through what is called as the regional center. These regional centers take care of some major infrastructure, logistic projects, where the EB-5 investors are pulled together and they administer the project and you get the green card. By creating this reserved category with a 10%, that changed the landscape. Similarly, if you go to a regional center which is engaging in a rural project, you get 20%. That means you get 200 visas every year for India. 2% for infrastructure-related projects. But these numbers are all current for Indians. There is no waiting time. With the result, if somebody invests this money, they'll get a green card in 2 years, period. This is a short window because those lines are also building up for Indians. So I urge all of you to take this golden opportunity to think of that as an option. The second change that this Immigration Reform and Integrity Act, which was passed in 2022, was that it simply fixed the amount of $800,000. And the $800,000 cannot be changed by the US Congress, and it is valid till 2027. So they cannot increase that amount. It's grandfathered. The third change, which is equally interesting, is that it changed the process by saying those who are in the US on any visa, student visa, or they're on an H1 visa, L1 visa, any of them are able to apply for a change of status in the US itself. So when you apply for a change of status in the US, along with the petition that you file with $800,000 to invest, you get all the rights of a green card holder except you don't have a green card. And those rights include, but not limited to, getting a work authorization which is universal in its nature, which means you can work anywhere you like. You are not confined to work for one employer in a particular field, or you are not even required to work for an employer. You can start your own startup, you can start your own company, and start taking advantage of all the opportunities that US offers, US economy offers. That is a phenomenal change. The other change they did was that you are also able to get what is called as an advance parole. The advance parole enables you to travel back and forth without ever going to the US consulate. You all know what a nightmare it is to go through the consulate with long lines. So that too, you are able to overcome if you are in the US on any kind of non-immigrant visa. So if you begin to see the EB-5 program, it has opened up this phenomenal opportunity for Indians, parents whose kids are going to school there, parents who want to send their kids to the US, or parents themselves who want to move. In all of these categories, you are able to get all the benefits right away. And there is an end, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. In 2 years or so, you get the green card itself. What else changed about it? They also created some fundamentally robust institutional regulatory standards for the regional centers so that they are subject to multiple audits, the regional centers. Not only the regional center has to be approved, each project has to be approved. And each project will be subject to audits, unspecified site visits. So the regulatory framework that they've given for the regional centers is so tight that it is very difficult to pass through that. So what happens to your $800,000? Your $800,000 is an investment you are making. You are taking some degree of risk, but in about 4 to 6 year time frame, you get the money back. It's an investment. And the only cost you are really incurring is the opportunity cost of parking that money in a regional center with a very low rate of return, 1%. But I tell people you shouldn't consider the EB-5 investment from the perspective of a regular investor. You can't wear these two hats and constantly be in a state of confusion. Your primary goal while you are entering the EB-5 program is basically to get a green card, and to get a green card quickly. The rate of return should not be calculated in a simple way of saying, here is the rate of return, here is the present value of what I'm investing and so on. It should be calculated on a much more composite index. You're opening opportunities. Your kids are able to work there. You're able to establish your family. Even if there is a Citizenship Act that gets amended, children born to permanent residents will become US citizens, even under change regulation, which I don't think which is even going to come to see the light of the day. But even if it happens, it's not going to happen. What is the difference between the EB-5 program and the golden visa card that the president spoke about? In the Golden Visa card, you give $5 million, and it's not an investment. It's the money you pay to get your green card. And you get your green card, and your income is not subject to worldwide taxes. The benefit of the Golden Visa card is for those with high net worth who just want to start businesses in the US. This program has been tried in many countries, in Europe and other countries, largely not very successful. The registration process is started for the lottery, for the gold visa card in the US, but no implementation regulations have been announced. So the gist of what I'm here to tell you is, look at all these visa categories. It's not a substitute for all of them, but it enriches your ability to get into whatever you're doing, including going to school, coming to the US, taking advantage of all the non-immigrant visas, but gives you a very predictable pathway to get a green card. I'll close my comments with that and take questions. Thank you.
You have your mic, right?
Yes.
You have, sir? You want a mic?
No, I'm very comfortable. I think I'll pull a little farther.
Yeah.
No, we should move a little farther from each other. It echoes.
Sir, thank you so much. You started off with F1 and then with L1, with H1B, telling the nuances of do's and don'ts of all these categories, moving on to